What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. This episode's going to be a little different. We wanted to chat about oil, but then also how that ties into finding a career in an industry that you're just passionate about. And we had come across this Instagram page. Our guest today is going to be Wendy, and her page is Wendy the Oil Lady. And she had a really fascinating story about how she got into the oil industry. It wasn't something that she really had any experience with, but once she experienced it, just got completely impassioned with working in it, learning more, the technical side, the interpersonal relationships. And one of the themes we hear about in diesel a lot from business owners, shop owners, is how tough it can be to find people who are passionate about automotive or passionate about manufacturing. And we wanted to ask Wendy about her experience in oil and then also in construction. And there's some groups and things that she does where it brings together people who are passionate about their industries and really tries to help them find ways and direct people who might be interested. So it's going to be a really interesting podcast. Before we get to it, we want to encourage anyone that's listening on any of the podcast apps out there, make sure you go to the Diesel Podcast on YouTube, click subscribe, and then hit the bell notification button. That way you'll get notified right away when these episodes release. And we're doing a new format with them. So if you're listening on a podcast app and want to have a more in-depth experience, if you want to see the trucks, the people, the parts that we're talking about, we're going to be recording video with all of our guests. So you've already seen some of them roll out. We're going to continue to do this. So want to make sure you guys go over to YouTube and search Deuce Podcast and subscribe. All right, let's get to the podcast with Wendy and chatting about how she got into the oil industry and why she's so passionate about it. Wendy, welcome to the Diesel Podcast and chatting with us about something that I know interests all diesel truck owners, whether it's a pickup or over the road or equipment, and that's oil and lubrication and the things that we use to keep these trucks and equipment running. So it's going to be fantastic to chat with you today, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for reaching out. This is exciting.
Yeah, I was on Instagram one day, and that's how I had found you. And I was checking out some of the things that you're involved in, some of the other podcasts you've done, and the information. And I'm reading through it. And I'm like, this is a lot of what our audience either asks, works in themselves. I know you're involved in a lot of different industries and work with a lot of companies. And it's, I know anytime we talk about oil, it's always a really popular topic because we're so in tune with, how it affects how not just an engine, but equipment runs and other things that, it's crucial to what we talk about on the Diesel Podcast.
Well, and there's so much that goes into it, and then everybody kind of has their own thoughts and opinions on it. And if I can help clarify anything in any way, that's what I'm here for. So my favorite part is the technical stuff. So when I have followers reach out with specific questions, yeah, I love it. I don't always know the answer, but it forces me to go figure out the answer. And then I always have that in my back pocket when I encounter it in the field as I'm out working. So anything that I can add to my tool belt and any way that I can help people, it's a blast.
How did you get drawn to this industry? What interested you in it at the beginning to get involved?
So it was so by chance. I am definitely one of those people that fell into the trades. I did not grow up in it. I grew up in rural Michigan. My parents did not work trade-related jobs. I was one of those part of that generation that was like, okay, you need to go to college. You got to go get your 4-year degree. You got to spend all this money on it. So that's what I did, right? I went to Michigan State University. Go green. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't really have direction. I thought it was going to be the medical field. I started in like a nursing program, hated that. Went over to physical therapy, so like pre-med. I've always been into fitness stuff, and I worked at fitness centers all through college and high school. And decided, oh my God, I don't want to go another 4 years after this to get my doctorate to be a physical therapist. There's no way that's going to happen. And I was not the best student to begin with. I enjoy learning in the classroom setting, but I wanted to work. Like I really just wanted to go work 40 hours a week, make ends meet. I loved networking and being out with people. So at the time it was in the fitness industry. So I ended up switching. My minor was in Spanish language. I exhausted our program in high school and was pretty good at that. And so my guidance counselor in school was like, you know what, why don't we just make Spanish your major, get your degree, and then we'll figure it out from there. So I did that. A good girlfriend who I met in school moved away to Chicago for a job after she graduated. And because I didn't really have an idea what I wanted to do, it was another fitness opportunity. She said, hey, my company's got this position open. You'd be good for it. Why don't you come interview for it? So on a whim, I drove 3 hours to Chicago, interviewed for this job, got it, and then moved a week later. So it was like bing, bam, boom, but to the big city. While I was there working still in fitness, I kind of started to really think about what I wanted to do. And at that point in time, it was be a police officer. And hindsight's 2020. I am so thankful for them and what they do, but I am glad that I did not go into that profession with what it's dealing with right now. And I was in membership sales at this point in time. And so I was doing a lot of networking. And I had a woman come in to buy a membership who was a manager at a oil distributor out in an industrial park in Chicago. And I didn't know anything about it. She liked my personality. She said, I have this marketing position open. I think you'd be great for it. Why don't you come check it out? And at this point in time, I had done a ton of ride-alongs. I was like, this is the career path I'm on. I'm going to be a cop. I'm flattered. Thank you for this, but this is what I'm doing. But she was so persistent that I decided to go check it out, go out there, do the interview, see what it was about. And I had never been into an industrial setting like this before, with industry all around, trucks coming in and out, delivering things. It's right by O'Hare. So you've got the jets flying over. It's hustle and bustle and things are happening. And I thought, this is cool. Okay, I like this. And they were offering me a salary, and right out of school with all this debt, I was like, okay, this is great. Whereas if you're going to be a police officer, you have to go apply, and hope they hire you. And in some states, you have to pay your way through the academy. So it could be a while until you are making money. So it was like, okay, all right, I'll do this. Let's check it out. We'll see how it goes. And that was my first real professional setting. So I was in an office doing marketing stuff that was way over my head. No experience with this high level type marketing. It was my first exposure to the industry. So I fell in love with the industry that way, but I was a terrible employee. And I will happily admit that because I didn't know what I was doing. They ended up eliminating my position. They were owned by a private equity group, and so they kind of restructured every now and then, but I know it was because I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing. So my whole life turned upside down at this point because I had moved to be closer to them, and here I am without a job, tons of college debt. I'm like, okay, I like this. I got to know a lot of the reps while I was there because I had to work hand in hand with them that were out in the field. And I got close with one who did a lot of heavy industry. So he was more in the steel mills and things like that, dealing with them on a regular basis. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I like this. Can I come shadow you for a few days in the field to see what you do? And he was all about it. So he took me into the mills down in Gary, Indiana. And I mean, that was a whole different world. It was like walking into a documentary where you see them making things, like how it's made and stuff like that. Yeah. And so that was my first real exposure to it in the field. And I fell in love at that point. And so I found a competitor who was hiring for field reps. And I reached out and I said, hey, this is where I came from. I want to be in the field. I'd love to come in for an interview. And so they brought me in and they hired me on the spot. And I feel like it was because I came from their biggest competitor. So they were excited to get me in and maybe get some knowledge on the inside, but once I got out into the field, it really lit a fire under me to go out and be the best I could be. And I just loved it so much. So I had this passion, and I worked my butt off, and I put myself through all kinds of certifications. I took advantage of every opportunity that came my way. I joined industry associations. So this company put me in, we have different channels. So there's the industrial side, which is all your manufacturing, the commercial sector, which is what I do. So that's going to be heavy equipment, heavy machinery, and trucking. And then you've got your passenger car stuff. So that's your dealerships, your quick lubes, so on and so forth. So that was my main focus. And while I can go out and work with anybody, but that's really where I have the best education and where I can really talk to people. So I joined industry-related associations, so a lot of construction associations, to help boost my name and network and get to know people and get to understand it better. And I had some pretty good success. And I don't mean that to like toot my own horn, but really putting in the work helped me excel. And I just saw a need. I don't know. I took the marketing stuff that I learned. So I started a little newsletter that was Oil Adventures with Wendy, and I would send it out. I'd take some pictures where I was allowed at cool places that I'd go visit. So the different businesses and stuff, if I thought what they were doing was really neat. And someone like me who had no exposure to this stuff thought, well, there's more people out there who have no idea how this stuff is made or what goes into this. So somebody's got to find it to be cool, while at the same time, this could help sales because I'm showing and I'm taking an interest in people's businesses and their lives and what they do. And so I started this newsletter and this blog, and that took off and that helped. And then I ended up switching companies. So I had another competitor kind of poach me away from that company after I built up my name. And that's who I'm with now. So it's a shell distributor, and I've actually, all three of them have been shell distributors. So I'm pretty partial to the brand. I'm a little bit biased. But I don't represent, I don't speak on behalf of Shell. I just sell their products, and I have a good relationship with them. So that's what I do now. I'm still in the field. I'm one of 2 reps in Chicago. I'm the only female on our team, which, I mean, that's pretty common. I've been the only woman in the room for most of my career now and have gotten used to that. And I saw, when I switched companies right around the time of COVID, because that was right before COVID happened, I saw an opportunity to maybe start branding on social media. I didn't see anyone out there doing what I was doing. And I had no intention of any sort of fame or anything like that. It was more, again, for sales, to help with sales, to help kind of have a living resume, right? You can go on there and get to know me and see that I actually know what I'm talking about or try to learn it, and really want to help people, really have the passion for it. And so I just started it, and I had the opportunity to go to ConExpo, and that really helped boost my following, being there and then getting to know other influencers and in the industry, and just took it from there and ran with it. And it has been great for business, and it has been a blast getting to know people and then having opportunities like this come up. And so here I am, found my way into the industry by chance and love it.
It's really interesting. There's a lot of similarities we have. I mean, one of them is, I know on Saturdays we're both rooting against University of Michigan football team. And so that's
an Ohio guy?
No, I'm not. No, not an Ohio guy, but yeah, it's definitely always a team I've never rooted for.
Right.
But it was the same way for me when I was growing up. I didn't get a ton of direction other than from my parents saying, well, you have to go to college. So I grew up with that, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I actually got involved in construction originally. Once I graduated, I'm like, well, I need a job. I have to pay for all these, the last 4 years, and I didn't want to go to graduate school and, just keep it going. And it's interesting how it all linked for you. And it was something where, when you first were exposed to this industry, I know this is what I want to do. I'm really excited about it. Yep. And diesels and the automotive industry were like that for me, as it was something that happened after 10 years of being in the professional workforce and doing something completely different. It was, hey, this is really exciting. I really enjoy the technical information, the excitement, the passion. There's so many different parts of it. And I think that is really important, especially now for people to hear. And even anyone who's listening who is in college now or just got out and they're thinking, well, what do I want to do? I don't know. I haven't been exposed to any industry that really excites me. I don't know if I want to do what I'm doing now for the next 40 years or 50 years. Yep. And so, was it something for you when you first saw it, you knew, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, for the rest of my career. I'm really excited about it. And yep. If so, well, what's some advice you would give somebody who may know or may have seen or felt, hey, I'm really excited about this particular industry, but they don't know how to get into it? Is it a matter of just being persistent and calling and trying to find that one opportunity? Or is it maybe, taking a position in that industry you're maybe not interested in forever, but you're using that as a way to get your foot in the door?
Right,
How
right.
would you, or what would you recommend to someone?
I love that you asked that, and I have to give a plug to this another group that I've joined recently, and I'm part of the founding board for, which was the stuff that I was posting on Instagram this weekend, called the Crew Collab. It's right now it's kind of geared towards construction trades, but we're going to target all blue collar trades, and our mission is to just get the exposure out there that these are fulfilling careers that you can make a ton of money in, that are having a big workforce development problem, that need new talent, and then to help change the stigma around them, right? Because I've been with my local associations, I've gone and helped them at their booths at like career days.
Yeah.
And the negative reaction that we would get from people's parents when they would walk up to our booth and see that we were construction and laborers and, all this was like, oh no, Johnny's going to be a doctor, or you can't, like this, those are the last resort careers. And that is so sad and so disheartening to me. And everybody that I've ever encountered in the trades is so proud of what they do and so passionate about it. And so to try to help utilize social media, we're going to do a whole bunch of campaigns where we will actually help kids. So if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want to be a diesel tech, I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, what are my options? We can help them figure out, like, that some examples, they might have to go through the union, but in that case, okay, here's your diesel tech schools in your area. I'm going to put you in touch with them. They're going to help you figure out what programming you want to go into, and then you'll roll with it from there. So maybe people who don't know how to get into these careers, but to answer your question, yeah, I would say follow your passion and just go for it. Don't be afraid to ask, especially if you can find somebody who is in that industry, work in that career, maybe somebody that might be interested in mentoring you or helping you, or at least pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Go for it. And don't be afraid. Don't hesitate. People are going to want to help you.
Well, I really like how you had mentioned that you wanted to do something different, or that you hadn't seen in your industry, and the reason for creating the blogs is I have a YouTube channel, and as I mentioned, I've seen the podcast episodes that you've done and things like that, and stepping outside of a comfort zone per se. Like a lot of people, when I ask about the Diesel podcast, they think that I originally started and this was comfortable for me. It wasn't. It was really kind of hard to jump onto either phone call or Zoom now with someone I maybe had never talked to or had talked to minimally. But how you have to take advantage and kind of create your own opportunities. And I see a lot of similarities in the diesel, the pickup truck market, in a sense that a lot of shop owners struggle with, where am I going to find the mechanic? Where am I going to find good help? Where am I going to find a marketing person? Where am I going to find that support structure? And then we get even more into a niche, and it's dealing with diesel pickup trucks and maybe even a little bit of performance. And they have this huge need for workers, for people who want to do it. And I see a lot of similarities with what you just mentioned, with the trade shows where you go to, and there can almost be this stigma attached to it, but to me, it's so exciting. And that's one of the reasons I was really looking forward to this podcast, is I saw how these two different industries kind of meet. And I know we're going to chat about oil and things like that here in a minute, but just the similarities with it, and how you've carved a path that I know a lot of people that message into us and they say, hey, Patrick, I listen to the podcast. I want to do this for a career. Where do I start? And I can kind of try to help them, but I don't see anything in our industry like what you're doing, where there's a group of people who get together and we're saying, hey, if somebody reaches out to us, we can tell them, hey, this is where you start, or here's some tips or some things that you can look at.
Yep. So we're hoping that it takes off. I think it will. We've got some big OEMs behind us. Yeah, it'll be good. And I want to be clear too, like for any ladies who are listening out there, like it was intimidating at first. I mean, when I would walk into diesel shops, job sites, things like that, you can definitely tell that you're being watched. They're not used to someone like you stepping in the door. But as long as you present yourself well with confidence and professionally, and maybe take a little extra time to get versed in the language,
Yeah.
and are genuine, they are happy to work with it. I have never thought that my gender was an obstacle to anything. I mean, you get once in a blue moon, you get some idiot who has his own issues that wants to say some comment or something like that. You can't let that get under your skin. But as far as in general, I feel like I almost have an advantage because I can walk in the back door to a shop at a company and go talk to the guy, and he's happy to talk to me, versus when my male counterpart does that, he gets kicked out immediately and told to go into the front and see the gatekeeper and check in. And, but as long as I have proven that I understand what's going on, or that I'm going to try to find the answer if I don't know it, and I'm going to take care of them to the best of my ability, I've had great success, like I've said, and I want to encourage any women out there to just go for it. And it's a blast, and everybody's respectful for the most part. And I know everybody has different experiences, but this has been mine, and I love it.
That's another really important aspect as well, is, in the diesel automotive side, is I know that with a lot of these shops and a lot of these companies, say a guy starts a shop in Texas or Oklahoma or any state, and he's out there diagnosing trucks, working on them. Well, his wife is running the business. She's doing the marketing, she's doing the payroll, she's organizing all those things. And I learned really quick, the reason a lot of these shops are running and are doing really well is because women are running them, and how they do it. And sometimes we'll get, younger women that are they're really excited and passionate about diesels. And I think they can almost be a little intimidated because it is so heavily male dominated. And I always like to have these stories of women who have been successful in their own careers and how they did it. And it's really about the content of the work and doing the work, and not to be intimidated by it. And it's really exciting to hear, what you said, and the work that you guys are doing on that for anyone that's listening. And, there's women out there. It's like, hey, I'm really excited about this. I want to own my own shop, or I want to manufacture this part, or I want to do whatever it is I want to do, not to let some of these older things that may be attached to the industry prevent them from doing that.
Yep. Well, and there's such a need for talent in all of these industries now that to not look at women as a viable workforce solution is stupid, for lack of a better term. And yes, and I have been told by customers before that they would almost rather work with a female rep because they pay more attention to detail. They get back at a quicker rate, they work a little bit harder, and that's not the case at always. I don't want to discount my male counterparts. They're great too. But I have heard this from people, and I actually just went into a machine shop a couple weeks ago. They were manufacturing defense modules that go into defense jets, like military jets and things like that. And he said that he prefers to hire women operators for his machines because they pay greater attention to the detail of the product, and he gets a better product from it. So there's definitely a place for all of us within the trades.
Now, as far as, when I was reading through, some of the blog posts that you have, and some of the YouTube videos that you made, I was thinking about the diesel pickup truck market. And the first thing that I thought about was, anytime we've covered oil, it's just a massive topic because we all want these trucks to last. We all invest in them. And there's so many choices out there. And I know my dad, he's a dedicated Rotella fan. So, I mean, that was
like them, right?
And so, from your perspective, what do you guys, or how do you come across the diesel pickup truck market, whether it's fleets or individuals or something like that? What are people asking for? What are they curious about? What are common questions they might ask as it relates to oil or lubricants or anything to maintain their vehicles?
So the most frequent questions that I get, at least over social media on my Instagram page, come from pickup owners who give me the year, make, model, engine type of their truck, and they want to know what to use in it. As far as engine oil goes, that's going to be my most common question. When I'm dealing with pickups, it's usually as part of a fleet. So it's going to be like a municipality, the public works department, who's got to service their heavy equipment, their trucks, and their heavy trucks and their pickups for their guys. Or it's going to be like a construction contractor who's got their fleet of pickups for their project managers and estimators and things like that. I don't get into it much beyond that, to be honest. Most of the stuff that I'm dealing with is going to be like Class 8, large diesel, your Kenworth, your Peterbilt, your Volvo, or your heavy construction machinery. That's typically what I'm dealing with. But yes, that's going to be the most common question. What engine oil do I use in it?
I think that there's a lot of our listeners who they have a diesel truck, but they work in something else. And I know a lot of them work on heavy equipment, or they're involved in trades where they're using diesel engines. And I think especially on the pickup truck side, but I imagine in the over the road stuff as well, his emission standards and changes as time goes on definitely affect what kind of questions people ask, but then also what kind of products are available. So, as far as in your part of the industry, is when there are these massive changes in emissions, or like with a fleet, and I think they're getting ready to change here in a couple of years as well for pickups, but is it hard to educate the fleet managers to say, hey, there's going to be a change in in emission standards or something like that, and here's this new product, or do they just lean on you entirely and just say, hey, we know what you're talking about, we need to run this different oil in this year truck or this fleet that we have versus this other one? Or how does that all work when there are changes in maintenance products that
Sure.
people need?
I would say it's case by case. I would say half my clientele is pretty old school and has been in the industry for many, many years, and they know what's best, and you're not going to convince them otherwise. And no regulation, no OEM recommendation is going to convince them otherwise, and that's fine. There's a place for that. The other half, I would say, are where I'm starting to see younger guys get into fleet management roles and things like that, and they are much more open to asking the questions, listening to all the different answers, utilizing different technologies, and sticking to the OEM recommendations, like really wanting to be by the book. And lubricants is interesting because there's not everything, like I said, is case by case. Everything is going to be a custom answer. So really the recommendations that are given are going to be based on your specific application, what you're doing with that vehicle or that piece of machinery, what the environment's like, all the factors that are going into it as far as the recommendation that I'm going to give, if I'm going to be really correct in what I'm doing. But most of the time I'll get questions like a guy, I have this quite often. I had it last week. I have a small fleet. They've got a beautiful fleet of trucks that they have, but they're small, family-owned company. And he's bringing in his first post-emissions truck that's going to have the whole DPF system. He's got to buy DEF now. He's not experienced in this because he's never had to deal with it. And so he called me and said, okay, they told me, the guy who's selling this to me said, I got to run 1030 in it, Synblend 1030. I'm carrying 1540 right now. I really don't want to carry two products. What do you recommend? Like, what's really going on here? And when I'm representing companies, I have to say the politically correct answer, right? But then really there's a good answer that can be kind of behind the scenes that's given. So to this gentleman, I would say, what? When they are calling for different viscosity weights on these oils, the OEMs are going into lighter oils because there's a push by governments to lower emissions, right? And so lighter oils are easier to push through the engine. They get through it faster, and therefore you get some fuel economy savings. So therefore you're having to use less fuel per gallon as you're driving. It's very minimal, but in a large over-the-road fleet that's going from New York to Canada, or to California, they're going to see that fuel savings. The local guy who's just doing a small radius, run in, stop and go, this and that, he's not really going to see that difference in fuel economy. There is the benefit of just the better efficiency, the better quality, the better protection on cold starts that these lighter oils have, right? Because you're going to get that oil into the engine and protecting the components quicker than you would on a heavier product. So there's that to take into consideration, but the difference for the viscosity grades is the difference in the operating temperature. So in the US here, we don't have a big enough swing to say, okay, you're over here in Florida, you need to use this grade of a product. You're up here in Washington State or Minnesota, you need to use this product. It's not a big enough temperature swing. You can run 1540, 1030, or 540 in anywhere in the country, and you're going to have sufficient protection as far as your temperature ranges go. But that is the main differentiating factor in the viscosity grade differences, is operating and environmental temperature protection. So that's really to answer the question there. It's any of those products is going to work fine in any diesel engine in the US, in my opinion. Now, that's not the politically correct answer, but.
Yeah, I imagine with fleets too, it's so much different than, what we're typically used to, even on the podcast chatting with people. It's usually one person who has a particular brand or a particular weight that they're used to. But once we get into 10 trucks, 15, 100, 1,000, however many it might be, it's a totally different process that you go through to analyze that with how they're maintaining it. And I think that's one of the things that really interested me and got me thinking in a different way about oil and about even things like DEF and greases and other types of things. Is what if it's not just our truck? What if this is an entire fleet we use for our business and our customers? How do you approach that? And you look for a complete solution to it. Just like the example you gave, he didn't want to have to stock two different types of oils for his trucks. He was looking for one thing. Yep. And so that's a really interesting, aspect to it. And, as far as some of the other things besides oil, like DEF and stuff like that, have you found in your experience that these fleet managers or companies are just, when it comes to DEF or some of the newer things on diesels, they've accepted that's just part of their maintenance process? Or is it kind of harder to get them on board with, hey, you're gonna have to buy this extra thing? How does that work on your side?
They've definitely accepted it at this point in time. Most places that I go have to have DEF on hand. It's pretty few and far between now to find companies who have managed to keep their entire fleet pre-emissions.
Yeah.
As we get further down the road here. But yeah, I would say they've generally just accepted it. Nobody's really happy about it. Nobody wants to deal with it. It's a headache and it's a hassle, but they are. So we do our best to take care of them and help them mitigate the problems that come up when they do and go from there.
How often are companies changing over their fleets, or how current, on an average, would you say that their trucks are? Like, are they at most maybe 5 years old or 3 years old, or how often do they turn them over?
It's pretty all over the board, to be honest, and it kind of depends on the industry. So in construction, for like road builders and earth movers and things like that, they try to keep it. They'll have it older because that equipment ages. It's more expensive, so they want to keep it around as long as they can. But as far as like fleets of trucks, pretty new. I would say most of it's pretty new now. I would 3 to 5 years is the cycle for a lot of them, or where they'll do it, by mileage or by hours. But they're generally pretty new. And so then you have to start dealing, like when I walk into places like that have equipment that's under warranty, now I have to retailor my proposal and how I'm going to help them to make sure that they are, keeping that warranty in place with what they're doing, and then also taking care of the vehicles once they're out of warranty. So.
Yeah, that's something that's really interesting, because like I said, most of what we're chatting about on the podcast with companies and things like that, it's just one truck this guy's had since 1996 or 2003. He's never getting rid of it. And this whole this last week, thinking about this podcast, I'm like, this is changing a lot of the things, a lot of the questions I ask, because I've never thought about all these trucks and how I would maintain dozens of them or hundreds or, maybe even thousands of them. But I imagine, that the questions are very similar. And I think whether it's a fleet manager or an individual owner, we all want our vehicles to not be down, to be up and running. And there's so much information out there and it's so hard to keep up on it that we just don't know where to turn. And I think that's, like what you do and the experience that you have and the knowledge. I could just call you up and say, hey, what do I need? And then when can I get it here?
Yes. Those are my favorite calls. I love it. I still have connections from my last company that will call me with those questions all the time. And I'm so happy to help. But I don't expect you to be a customer. I love answering those questions for anybody. So, but that would be my job. And I would hope that, right, like I actually went down to Shell's corporate last year before COVID came to help them be better at targeting their heavy equipment audience, because I have done a good job at being that resource. Like, we want to market ourselves as the distributor and as the rep, or I would hope so. A good rep would want to market themselves as someone who can wear that hat for the fleet manager to help take that burden of the million hats that they have to wear every day, off their plate. And I can help make sure that they're using all the right products in all the right places. Their guys can text me or call me when they've got a new unit coming in, or they're bringing a new piece into their fleet. They don't know what to use. They lost the manual. They can't figure out what it calls for. And then you get a lot of this equipment now, at least on the construction side, is starting to call for zinc-free engine oils. And the only real reason for that is because they anticipate, as environmental regulations get tighter and tighter down the road, that all oils are going to have to go to zinc-free. And that's nothing to do with the performance. That's everything to do with the biodegradability of the product if it were to get spilled. And so then having to keep all that in mind too, as new regulations are coming down the pipe for these fleet managers.
I know this question, I definitely didn't prepare you for it, because I didn't even think of asking this question until right now. Is with the push towards electric vehicles, which we're seeing, I know on the diesel pickup truck side and the enthusiast side, it's just massive resistance, not necessarily to the technology, but just anything new is different. And it's hard to convince them, hey, you don't need this, 5.9 or 6.7 Cummins or this Power Stroke. This electric power plant's going to be what you buy. What do you find on your side of it with a lot of the talk, a lot of the ideas as it relates to electric power with vehicles? And I don't even know about equipment. I mean, that's almost a whole different topic in itself, but I was curious what you find on your side.
And I don't hear much either, because I am more on the diesel side, and there's less talk of it there. There's much more talk of it in the passenger car market right now. Mm-hmm. But I have gone to electric vehicle lubrication trainings. I think people forget that there's still metal on metal friction that's happening within these vehicles. So they're still going to require different oils. Everybody wants to get rid of big bad oil, but they forget that it's more than just fuel. Yeah. It's used in a lot of different, every setting. We're seeing, yes, OEMs are trying to push, and they're coming out with their flagship things. We've got, everybody's got one. It seems like every OEM is making their electric version of their thing, but there really has not yet been any real discussions around it on our side or in our industry and what we're seeing, but definitely in the passenger car market.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten here yet.
Yeah, it's so hard to even imagine how it could be a part of the
I would say it's not realistic yet.
Yeah.
What they're coming out with just isn't quite there for the needs that we have.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, there's so many different topics within this industry, and it's so hard to condense it. Yes. Even into a podcast episode is, there's your experience with construction, figuring out what industry you wanted to be in, what you've learned so far, the expertise that you've developed, what your customers ask for. And I know there's so many different types of backgrounds of people who listen to the podcast, and they might have a specific question for you. There might be a fleet manager out there that's like, hey, I need some solutions. And people are just curious about learning more, or a woman out there who's really passionate about getting involved in diesel or any industry in general, and heard what you said and is inspired by it. Where can people find more information about what you do, or if they have questions for you, whether it's related to oil or construction or just getting involved in an industry? Where's the best place to learn that and get in contact with you?
So the best place I would say would be my Instagram, which is at the.oil.lady. I am most active on there. I am on all platforms, so they can find me on LinkedIn as well. And you can look by the Oil Lady. You should be able to find me that way, or Wendy. Facebook, my company. So I work for a distributor called Rilco Lubricants. Their corporate office is in the Quad Cities. So we are in Rock Island, Davenport area. They took me on to grow the Chicago market. So that's where I'm based out of. We've got a facility here in Chicago. We are just getting into the Michigan market. We are also, we handle all of the state of Illinois, Northwest Indiana, soon Michigan, and then Iowa. So anyone within those places can work with me directly if they want to. I can provide all their products for them and solutions that they might need. But outside of that, I'm happy to help be a resource for anyone nationwide or even in Canada and other countries. I have a network of people that I can utilize and pull upon to get them help locally if they need help locally. And then I'll answer any question they have. So if they want to reach out on any of my platforms, or they can go to my website. I have a lot of great information that I try to keep there. And it's mainly need to know stuff. So new specs that are coming out. Here's a handy chart that I found that might help you out, or an article that pertains to a lot of people. I try to keep it really good, usable information there. And that is the -oil-lady.com.
Perfect. I think that there's so much, especially with the part that I come back to is, how do I figure out what it is that I want to do, and then how do I get involved in it, and how do I differentiate myself? And I mean, that could be a whole podcast episode in itself, which maybe in the future we can do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is chatting about that part of it. But I know, with the with oil and lubricants and maintenance, is how important that is. And it that feels like it's changing rapidly as well, especially in the pickup truck side with new models and new different things that are going on. And so I think, the information that you provided and the story that you told was really interesting. I appreciate your time today. I know, Mondays are kind of hectic anyway with all that's going on, but it was fantastic to chat with you and learn more and hear your story and where we can get in contact with you to learn more information.
Absolutely. And anytime, any topic you think of that has to do with this stuff, I'm happy to come back and we can really dig into it and get into the technical side of it. So, I mean, if anybody asks you questions, you can send them my way.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, go on over to YouTube, search the Diesel Podcast, hit the subscribe button, get notified of our episodes right when they release. And if there's any questions that you have or you'd like to be on the podcast, the best way to get in contact with us is to find us on Instagram. Just search the Diesel Podcast again, we'll pop right up, and send us a direct message. If you got a project you're working on, if you have questions about something going on in the diesel community and automotive in general, or maybe you just want to share your build and ask some questions and need some help getting, some questions answered or direction for some parts, anything like that, we love chatting with you guys. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.